Welcome to Chaos in the Lobby. I'm Spoony Bard, and with me today is Jamie Leighton, aka JPLRepo, who is one of the few people who has worked on Kerbal Space Program, Kerbal Space Program 2, and now the spiritual successor, Kitten Space Agency. So, Jamie, welcome and thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
So, what started out as you finding a game that you really enjoyed playing and then adding to the community through mods kind of became a huge part of your career. Had you been working on game design before you had started working for Squad and making mods for KSP2 or KSP?
No, actually never. I always played games even when I was young. But no, I'd worked in corporate IT for a long time. I'd been a programmer, designer, architect of like corporate systems and stuff like that, banking systems, finance systems, stuff like that. But no, I kind of had dropped gaming a lot because, I'd had a family and I didn't really have a lot of time. So I'd sort of stopped playing games for a while actually. And then I remember it was a long weekend. I think it was might have been Easter or something like that, because here in Australia you get a 4-day weekend for Easter. Um, I remember someone had mentioned to me about this game, about these little green men thing. And so I found it and I downloaded it and I started playing it. And I played it the whole weekend. I couldn't stop playing it. I think there was a mun, but I think that was it. So it might have been like version 0.07 or point some. It was very early. But yeah, I started playing it. I loved it. And then I found Scott Manley's videos, and then I found all the mod community, and yeah, that was it. After that, I thought I could probably make a mod or two for this. I kind of know how to program. So yeah, that's how it started.
And you've been pretty well known in the Kerbal Space Program community, pretty much since its inception. Like you said, there was only a month at the time. And you created a number of incredible mods like TAC Life Support, which is one of my personal favorites, as well as you've shared with me the other day, Research Bodies and Tarsier Space Technologies, which is kind of a satellite program.
Yeah, so those mods, oh, well, I mean, I didn't create them. A couple of other people created them and had kind of left the scene. I picked them up, especially the TAC LS one. I forget the guy's name. Um, he left the scene and I took over. And then yes, so the research bodies one, that was a guy also who had tried doing things and couldn't really figure out how to do stuff. And then um, I finished it, and the telescope one as well. Yeah. Um, and that was all before I worked for Squad, I think. Yes,
And had you been
most of
making
those.
mods for other games before this, or was this kind of your first foray into modding?
First, yep, I'd not found the time before that, as I said, with a young family and stuff before that. So yeah, and years before that, I used to play a lot of games, but I never really got into modding. I used to have too much fun playing them. Um, but yeah, that's sort of how it started. And from the modding, I started talking to some of the devs. Um, and then I ended up in their closed beta test team, I think it was called. I can't remember what it was called. Um, and then I can't remember how I ended up as the QA manager for Squad, but that was my first role. I was part-time. I was still working full-time job at the time. Um, but yes, that the first role I had was the QA. I was in the QA team, the QA manager. Um, and then all the devs left Squad, as you in your video with Felipe, and he talked about the mass exodus. So all the devs left the team, um, and they were like, "What do we do now?" And then I said to the head producer, "Well, I have a degree in computer science and maths, and I can actually program." And he went, "Oh, do you?" He didn't know. So then I ended up as one of the engineers, one of the devs on the game, yeah, and eventually lead dev on the game when they started hiring a few more people and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting how modding has really evolved since like when you first started in probably the early 2010s. I mean, it's been around forever. But a lot of people, like you said, most people are going to play most games just the vanilla version. And I remember when I was in middle school, my friends and I were playing Unreal Tournament. It was really popular at the time. And that was kind of the first game that I had started modding. We would kind of challenge each other to find the most ridiculous mods to play after school the next day. Um, and some people had managed to do some really incredible things, but the games weren't really built with modding in mind. But now, as time has gone on and the modding community has grown, we've seen more and more developers build, baked in tools to help people mod the game. Was that something that was kind of expected when you first contacted the Kerbal Space Program developers? Were they expecting people to really get into modding it, or did it just kind of grow with the community's interest?
Well, modding was always part of KSP, really, right? That's if you ask me, that was kind of half the success of KSP was the mods, I think. Yeah, it's funny because I remember I used to play a lot of games when I was in my 20s and whatever, but there wasn't much of an internet back then. So you go and buy the games on disc and whatever, and like mods and things didn't really exist, as you said. So like I kind of missed all of that vibe. And then when I picked up Kerbal and saw that they had created this modding environment, and that was kind of the culture. That was always the culture in KSP, KSP2, and now KSA as well. Is like, yeah, modding is important. I think it kind of brings that extra dimension and element to the game. Yeah, I mean, I even looked 2 days ago at the Discord for KSA, and it's like there's all these guys creating all this stuff. I'm like, oh God, look at what they're doing already. Like, and we've already got plans to build half that stuff, but here they are already building it, right? Like, so it's like, do we build it? We probably will build the bits that we were planning on doing, but like, I mean, that's one of, I guess, the dangers of it all is like, and I remember when we were doing DLCs for KSP, you'd see stuff mods out there, and we're like, wow, it's already been done as a mod. What can we do that's not a mod? But is that a bad thing? Like mods exist and people will play mods, but there's also an awful lot of people that don't, as you said. So, making it part of the base game really does open it up to a whole bunch of people that probably don't even think to install mods. So yeah, I mean, it's a key element, and I think it really makes a difference to the whole vibe of the game.
Yeah. I completely agree. I think Kerbal Space Program is one of those games that really pushed modding forward. I think that
Yeah, it
RimWorld
did.
did a lot for it. Obviously Minecraft and now
Yeah.
Roblox has kind of gotten. I mean, it's a little different. They've really baked in a lot of tools to help people, but it's kind of gotten a lot of people, I think, used to a game being more than just what comes out of the box and what the base game is, and changing the game and making new games out of it.
Well, Roblox is incredible. My youngest son, he's a nut on Roblox. He's created all these mo created all these mods and stuff of his own on Roblox. Like he's just gone nuts, and he's only 16, right? Like, so what's he going to be doing when he's 25? Like, yeah. No, not to say that's what he's going to do, but yeah, it opens a whole world. Some of the mods that they've got for that is they just create worlds. Like it's incredible. Okay, what are you looking at? What are you doing today? And it's like here's a whole new game world that they've created, kind of thing.
Kind of like
Yeah,
Gary's mod, but like just they took it and just
exactly.
ran with it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible. Yeah,
Yeah.
but that's got a whole bunch of tools that they've built into that to make it a lot easier. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And ultimately you became the lead engineer for Kerbal Space Program. And that was that transition, stepping into that role. Because like you said, there was a mass exodus, which is a lot of knowledge going out the door, a lot of
Yep.
retraining that's not happened. Was it difficult to kind of step into that role?
Uh, Personally, no, because like I'd worked leading teams, delivering, $100 million projects and stuff in corporate land. So to me, no, it wasn't that big of a challenge. The biggest challenge was managing the team as far as the development, the engineering team, getting things delivered, but also doing half of the work as well, like being an engineer as well. So it was two roles. It wasn't just managing other engineers, it was also doing code every day as well. Um,
Right.
so the hardest bit was just it took up a lot of time. Having to do kind of multiple roles. Like it was a small team. You know, squad was never really that big. I don't honestly know how many. It was never more than about 20 or 30 people really in total, you know, artists and management and everything. Like it was never really that big. Um, so you had to be multi-rolled.
If you're enjoying this podcast, make sure to subscribe for more. And if you want to support me and my channel, you can do so through Patreon or by joining my channel here on YouTube, where you'll get members only exclusives like early access to new episodes, members only videos, and extras. Plus, you'll be helping me focus on getting my next guest and creating new content. Harvester mentioned in my interview with him that there was a somewhat toxic environment over at Squad, and it's kind of putting it mildly. Uh, he even mentioned that there were times where that when they were hiring new employees, which he didn't really have much authority over, that they would even say to these new employees that, "Oh, this is Harvester. He created the game, but he's just another employee. Don't worry about him." Did you witness or experience any of these types of hostilities with the higher ups?
Not really. I mean, the owners were interesting. It was, I think, Harvester had a hard time. I think in the early days, they did hire a producer guy, Nesta, who came in before I joined as well, and I think he kind of put himself in the middle of a lot of that stuff. So I think, in a way, I didn't see a lot of it because I think he dealt with most of that kind of side of things with the owners and the business side of it. But I remember being involved in interviewing candidates and stuff. So I guess things did change when he joined the team, to be honest. Yeah, I didn't see a lot of hostility or anything like that. But like it wasn't long anyway. It was like only about 18 months or something like that until they sold it anyway. That I only worked for the Mexican company Squad. I think it was only about 12, 18 months. And then they sold it to private division, Take Two. Um, and then they disappeared. Um, so they were interesting. They were very interesting guys, that's for sure. Yeah, that was the original Squad owners. Um, yeah, I didn't have a lot to do with them, to be honest. I think Nesta kind of was the middleman, so he was running the day to day. Yeah, so no, I didn't really see a lot of that, and I think that all happened before Nesta sort of came into the picture. I think he only joined like 3 months before me or something like that. So yeah, it was just, I think it might have been they hired him when Harvester left, maybe roughly. I'm not quite sure on the timing there, but it was close, I think.
Yeah. And was there much overlap between when you were working as the part-time Q&A manager and when Harvester was still there? I'm assuming there was.
Very briefly, not for long. No, I think he had pretty much left the company by then. Yeah, it was. I think he was on his way out potentially. I think he was only there for like maybe a month or two, and I don't think I spoke to him much at all. No, yeah. So there was very little overlap.
Before they had sold Kerbal Space Program off to private division, were there plans for additional DLC that you guys were working on, or
No,
no?
there was no plans for anything.
Fair enough.
I don't know what we were doing. I remember I joined at that time. It was like version point 1.11 or 1.2 or something like that. Like they'd done the 1.0 when Felipe was still there, and then he left, and then all the other devs left. I think it was 1.12. They sort of did a last release fixing bugs and stuff. And I remember I was in the team. The first thing we did was the localization to all the languages. I think that was 1.13. Um, and no, I don't even remember that there was much plan on what are we going to do next. And then suddenly we just got told, you need to talk to these guys. And then suddenly Private Division arrived on the scene, uh, and sort of, yeah, they brought them out. And then we started having a lot more structure around what are we going to do and planning stuff out. And yeah, started making DLCs and stuff like that. Yeah, that was none of that was on the table when Squad was in charge. I think I watched your interview with Felipe. I don't think there was much direction on where they were going to go next, to be honest. And I think that's when they went, let's take our money and run, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because it is surprising because Felipe mentioned that he had a lot of ideas for where Kerbal Space Program could go in the future. Different, I think he said like Kerbal's, like an aeronautics program for Kerbals and like a
Yeah.
sea program. And it seems like with the success of Kerbal, they really would have wanted to capitalize on that. But I mean,
There were no plans. No, I know I saw he even had plans for a KSP2, Felipe had.
yeah.
Um, but I don't think they'd ever saw the light of day. No, I don't think those guys really had any idea on what to do next with this pot of gold that they sort of Felipe had created for them, essentially. Um, yeah, yeah, pretty much.
But as far as I understand, there was a good degree of overlap between in the timelines when KSP2 had started its development and some of those DLCs were being developed for Kerbal Space Program. Um,
Yes.
and I also understand there was sort of a firewall between the two development teams. When I asked Nate Simpson about this in our interview, he said that he wasn't aware of an official prohibition on communication. Um, was that policy to not speak to KSP2, or was that just something that kind of happened?
Just kind of happened. I don't think there was any policy. There wasn't a thing that said you can't talk to them. Um, we did talk to them, not very often though. Um, and that was the original. Was it called Uber? I think the original company name that won the contract to build KSP2. I think they were called Uber Entertainment or something like that,
Yeah, and then I
not
think Star
Uber the
Theory, and then
taxi. And then it got changed to Star Theory. Yep, because I think there was too much confusion about Uber, the yeah, book your taxi Uber.
right.
Um, so I think they changed their name. I remember having some meetings, a meeting with them. Um, in fact, I think once it changed to Star Theory, I remember visiting Seattle, their office, um, along with the other leads from Squad. We went and spent a week there. Um, so there wasn't like couldn't talk to them, but we went and spent a week and they picked our brains and whatnot. And then, we came back home again and kept working on the stuff we were working on. I know there was a lot of what are you working on in KSP1 and does that impact KSP2 scope or not? So there was a lot of that, but it wasn't like, oh, you can't do that or anything. It was just more like, oh, should we do that kind of thing? No, but there was very little conversation. That's true. But I don't think there was like a you must not talk to them.
Right. And you got transferred over to Intercept Games once KSP had shut down. And that was a couple years before, obviously, the game ended its development. And at that point, like we said, they'd already been development for several years. What was it like kind of jumping into the team at KSP2? Was it familiar or was it because we kind of have been we don't know a lot about the KSP2 code. Obviously you do, but there's always been rumors that it was built primarily on KSP1's foundation. So was that something that was difficult to jump into, or
Will I get in trouble for saying anything? I don't think so. Yes, it was. It was very much built on KSP1's foundation, much to our horror, I think. Um, yeah. Uh, it was different. They had built some different things to try and solve some of the problems from KSP1, but a lot of it was the same. Um, yes, we did our second DLC, and then we started pitching because originally we were told the squad would remain like a label kind of thing, and that we would perhaps get a different project to work on. And we pitched a whole bunch of ideas of things we might want to build that were Kerbal themed. Um, but then I think because KSP2 was sort of really struggling, so I remember we had conversations about, well, look, yeah, we need you to come and work at, I think it was still called Star 3. I'm on Intercept Games by then. No, it was Intercept Games, I'm pretty sure. Um, yeah, so we started working on it. Basically, they closed up shop on Squad. The whole team got transferred over, um, and I think we were accepted and loved. You know, Nate and everyone was really good to work with. I think they all saw us as like, oh, it's the KSP gods or the squad gods, like they've come to save us, kind of thing. But it was it was not that. Yeah, so we slotted into the team and started working on stuff and trying to help figure out some stuff and from our learnings on KSP1. Um, and it was an uphill battle the whole way. I think the technology, the fact that it was Unity, the fact that it was, yeah, its foundations were KSP1, even though they'd built a whole new sort of bunch of stuff around how the simulation worked in that. Um, we were always struggling with the limitations of the game engine. Um, it was a real struggle. Uh, yeah,
Yeah, because they were supposed to have originally when it was first announced, we saw the trailer. It was supposed to be a feature complete release in 2020, which is of course long before you came on board. Uh, so what was the morale like when you got there? And obviously they were very far from feature complete at that point. Were people like, "Whoa, what are we gonna do?" Or
yep,
uh,
yep. What are we going to do, and how do we get this to work? And then, yeah, it was a lot of hard work. I think we worked on it for about maybe 12 months, roughly. And then we were like, okay, we're starting to get somewhere. We're starting to see things are starting to come together and starting to work, even though it was still really shaky. And then we were told, well, we're going to release it on this date. It'll be early access. I don't think anyone in the team wanted that to happen. Um, I'm not proud of what was released at all. I did not want it to be released. But, you know, it's a company. They have shareholders. Um, there's a bottom line, and I've been around long enough, and I've owned enough shares in enough companies to know, yeah, you've got to keep your shareholders happy. So obviously, someone in the end decided we have to release something here. Um, they'd had all those years of development and the change of contract with Uber and then Intercept being spun up by private division and all of that. And I honestly don't know any of. I know probably as much as the public know about any of that stuff that happened. Um, but yeah, that didn't help, right? And then you had COVID in the middle of it as well. Um, and none of that helped and drew things out longer and longer. It had been in development for what, over 3 years, right? When they finally said we're going to release in early access, I think it was. Um,
I think it had even been longer than that. I think I remember reading
yeah,
seven
maybe.
years or something like that.
I
That it
don't know it'd been that long. No,
no, okay.
no.
Uh,
I think I remember I'd been working for Private Division for roughly 12 months. We'd done like one DLC maybe when they told us about KSP2, that they were going to make a KSP2. But we could find that out by looking at when Dean submitted his thing for KSP2 as well. I could ask him. I don't think it was that long. They would have had the submission process and selected someone, and then they would have fired up a contract and whatever. So yeah, there's no way it was. Can't be 7 years. But then time flies. I'm getting older. Yeah, maybe. um,
yeah, I'll have to double check on that because I did pull it up. I did read over their proposal. And again, in hindsight, it seems like the obvious choice. Why wouldn't you build this from the ground up? A game, Unity and Unreal have a lot of limitations, especially for a game where you're trying to do very specific things with physics.
yeah.
Uh, but yeah, as we mentioned, the game had had been in development for a while at that point. Were you surprised by the state of the game when you first kind of laid eyes on it, given that it was supposed to be feature complete in 2020?
Yeah. That's about all I'll say. Yes. Yes, I think we're all like, oh, ooh, yeah, okay. There's a lot of work to do here.
Was that when you first became concerned about the pace of development, or did you kind of think, okay, we
Well,
could probably pull this together?
well, no, I was quite concerned. In fact, yeah. I was very concerned the whole way. I did not have a fun time working on KSP2, to be honest. I mean, I loved the team. I loved how passionate everyone was. I loved what we actually managed to achieve, even though it was never great. Um, but given the starting point, yeah, yeah, I really met a lot of great people, worked with a lot of talented people. I just, yeah, there were a lot of things that were going on there. I think there was a lot of factors that probably contributed to its ultimate demise. You know, time was probably its worst enemy, I think. Um, yeah,
Well, do you think given more
it
time,
was,
it may have been able to reach feature complete? Because, when the Force Science came out,
yeah,
uh, which is the point. I mean, like you said, there wasn't a lot of leeway on when this was going to happen, but I think that for me, should have been the early access release because that Force Science, you started to see the reviews tick up. The overall sentiment about the game had started to kind of change online, and people were like, "All right, yeah, this is what we kind of expected to see." So, do you think, given enough time and enough runway, the team would have gotten there?
yes, I do. Um, we had a deadline. We had no say in that deadline. We had to release something that
Right.
kind of worked. None of us were, I think, were happy. Nate, no one was happy about what was released initially. But we came up with a plan on what we were going to do. We were going to put something out there. We then spent several months, 3 to 6 months, with sort of one stream of work working on bugs and trying to improve things and fix things that came up after the early access release. We had another stream that was working on the Force Science, and then we went full on Force Science. I really felt like that was really good. That really achieved something better. That probably should have been early access, as you said. Yeah, for sure. I felt like that was the first time the game was playable. Um, and then we kicked on from that, and we got about 90% through colonies. To be honest, like it was, yeah. I can't say what dates we had talked about dates, but it was getting close to being something we could put out. Um, and then we were all told it's the end of the line.
Uh, we don't know a whole lot about how colonies were going to work in Kerbal Space Program 2. Are you able to disclose kind of the system that you guys were going to put out?
Yeah, well, I mean, Chris Nertia, he was the mind child for most of that work. I worked closely with him. Great guy. He's done some work on KSA as well, actually. So yeah, colonies. I mean, we had built a bunch of work around being able to create a colony in orbit. You could actually build modules. There were resources, so there were Kerbals. Kerbals was like a resource. It was like they didn't walk around and exist, but you had like the colony would grow. It would have a population, if you like, and that population created these resources that you could then use to build onto the colony or create another ship. Um, and there was actually a like orbital VAB that you could build ships in and then launch them. Another part was having the supply runs that I've heard everyone talking about as well. Yeah. So that was all sort of, yeah, 80%, 90% done.
That's kind of heartbreaking because the orbital vehicle assembly
It's
bays are,
extremely heartbreaking.
yeah.
And then that code never got released. So even the modders can't really do anything with it because it never saw the light of day. It was never actually publicly released, even dormantly. So that code now belongs to what are they called? A Valley Investments.
Yeah, that's the name I've
Um,
heard. I've also heard that well, I've heard a couple things. I've heard that ex Annapurna developers, but then I guess it wasn't developers, it was ex Annapurna publishers were somehow involved, but not specifically with Kerbal Space Program. It was probably the other titles that were sold off as well with Private Division. Uh, but speaking
that's
of,
my feeling. That's my feeling. Private Division got sold off, and there were other titles, unreleased titles like that, Tales of the Shire, and there was another one too. I forget. I think they probably look to capitalize on those titles. I think KSP was thrown in there with the rest.
Yeah.
I have no idea. Like the only thing they've done now is release some sort of really half-baked plushie that I saw online, which I thought was pretty ordinary looking compared to the original plushies. But yeah, that's the only thing I think I've heard that's happened. I don't think anything's going to happen with it.
That is disappointing. Even though I'm looking forward to Kitten Space Agency, it is disappointing that that road has kind of come to an end. Uh, but yeah, I agree with you. I do think that they threw in Kerbal Space Program as like just sweeten the pot. Because if you look at the games that were on there, there was the unreleased Lord of the Rings Tales of Shire game, and then but the real
Right.
crown jewel was Kerbal Space Program. Because even today, uh, I think they sell something like 600 to 1,000 copies on Steam every week of Kerbal Space Program 1, which is still solid numbers, even after all this
KSP1,
time.
sure. Yeah, I mean, it's got a long tail, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But KSP2, really, I don't want to. Yeah,
Yeah, I think I
I
looked
feel
up the
like
sales numbers, but it wasn't KSP1 numbers. Uh,
no. I'd be asking for a refund personally, but I never paid for it. So, I mean, yeah, I paid for KSP1 originally, but I think I got more than my money's worth out of KSP1.
I
When
would
you
agree
think
with that.
about the price of going to the movies,
Right.
and getting entertained for 2 hours compared to hundreds of thousands of hours playing KSP1. Yeah,
Yeah, I think
it's
I spent less on
very good
KSP1
value.
than they charged for popcorn, honestly. I don't even think I spent that.
I
Uh,
think I paid $15, $20 or something for it way back in the day before it was even on Steam, right?
yeah.
Yeah, when they had their own shop. Yeah.
But speaking of more time, how much time were you guys given, between when you found out the game was going to end development and when they kicked you out the door?
Not much longer than when the public found out. Yeah, it was very quick. It was very sudden. Everyone was in shock. Um, I don't think anyone saw it coming. Um, yeah,
Was there like a mad
not
dash
long.
to finish colonies and try to get it out, or was it kind of like, okay, let's squash what bugs we can and
No, we asked if there was going to be anything released, and we just got told not really. Yeah, spent 2 months looking for a job basically.
yeah.
No, uh, yeah, not a lot happened after that warn notice. Let's put it that way. Yeah, I think everyone knew it's over.
Are you able to say why you personally think they made that decision? Why Take-Two decided to shut them down, or just
No
money?
idea. I can only speculate because none of those kind of business decisions filtered down much. It's a big corporate, entity. Um, Head office was in New York and we were based in Seattle. Private division was in Seattle. I don't think anyone really knew it was coming until it happened. Um, but I mean, we were just told KSP was being shut down and that was it. And private division was still in existence. In fact, we were told private division wasn't going anywhere. And then it was like how many months after they shut down KSP2, they then sold off the whole private division and shut down the whole label. But that all happened after we'd left. So that was a bit of a shock too. It was like, okay, so, I can only speculate. As a shareholder, I would suspect it's got something to do with cost cutting and saving money. But yeah, don't know.
Yeah, at the time there was a
Yeah, it
lot
was
of
pretty.
conflicting stories. Because even the CEO of Take-Two was like, "Oh, the Intercept Games isn't shutting down." Or well, I think what he specifically says what was Intercept Games has not been shut down, which I think at the time was technically true. I think it still technically existed when he made that statement, which was uh
Yep. So probably a typical CEO statement, right?
yeah,
Yep. So he wasn't wrong.
wasn't wrong.
Um,
It wasn't a lie. Uh
no, he didn't lie. Um, but yeah, no idea. And it was such a shock to everyone. Everyone was gutted, honestly. Everyone was so passionate about it, and we felt like with For Science things had gone so well, and then we were making so much good progress with the colonies side of it, and then it suddenly just, sorry, it's all over. Everyone was just like, this can't. Like, I think everyone for the first couple of weeks was like, this can't be real. This can't be happening.
And of course, in
But
in
it
the
was.
community, we thought the same thing. The Warren came out and we saw that, and we're like, okay, maybe it's just restructuring. Maybe, okay, it went from Star Theory to Intercept Games. Maybe it's the same thing. Maybe they're moving it over to another private division label. And because we didn't hear anything for, and I mean, I'm sure they had you guys
Yeah.
under NDA really quick, but
Yep.
we didn't hear anything for, I mean, months. Uh, I mean, it's still,
Yeah.
I think we still technically haven't heard anything official from Take Two as far as it's
No,
concerned, other than, well, they sold it.
never
Um,
will.
yeah,
Yeah.
figured. But now, of course, you're working with Dean Hall over at RocketWorks, building the spiritual successor to Kerbal Space Program, which is called Kitten Space
Yep.
Agency. And this time it is being
Yep.
built from the ground up on a custom framework called Brutal. So after Intercept
Yep.
Games closed down, how long was it before you got a call from Dean saying, hey, come check out what we're planning to build?
Not even a month. It was actually, I think it was really good timing. So I think someone had said to Dean or to some of his executive team, um, they'd mentioned me, and that I was nearby because I live in Australia. Um, so it's a 3 hour plane trip for me to get to Auckland. It's very close. In fact, a lot of people consider Australia and New Zealand to be brothers anyway, and pretty much, the same thing. We can travel between the two countries without even a visa. You do need a passport, but yeah, we get the fast lane because it's like, yeah,
Oh, that's awesome. Actually, I
um,
didn't know that. That's really cool.
yeah. So because they have like pretty much the same quarantine restrictions and everything as Australia, so yeah, generally it's pretty quick going through customs. Don't need a visa. You can work there without even a working visa, as long as you've got a passport from Australia or New Zealand. Um, So anyway, yeah, I think someone had mentioned it, and then one of the guys, one of his executive team, Dylan, um, he was here on the Gold Coast. I live on the Gold Coast, um, for a Unreal conference, I think it was, literally in the June or July, like when the Warn thing finished, basically. Um, And so he contacted me and said, "Oh, actually going to be in your neighborhood." And so we sat down at a pub and had a chat and a few beers. And um, I was intrigued. I was also like, you're not using Unreal or Unity to build, like, really?" I was very skeptical, to be honest. I was very, very skeptical. I think Dylan went back, told Dean. I spoke to Dean. Dean's like, you know what? I think we just get you over here and show you. So yes, I went over for a week, sat down with Dean in his office for a week, and I was blown away by how far they'd even gotten with it already. I believe they'd been working on it for a bit of a while. They'd done like this tech demo of the planet, the billboarding system. So he already had that working. Um, and yeah, so that was like I literally started working for Dean July, like a month after the Warn shut down, basically. Yeah.
Nice. And was Brutal
So I
difficult
started.
to learn, or?
No, no. I mean, Brutal's just a framework. It's just an API. So it's just .NET. It's C sharp. If you know how to do C sharp, which Unity uses. So all of the programming I had done in Unity for 7, 8, 9 years in KSP was C sharp. Um, Best bit about Brutal is we can use the latest C sharp because we just upgraded to .NET 10. Like if we were on Unity, we're still stuck on their mono 2004 version of C sharp or whatever. Like, yeah. So in that way, it's a lot better because you get all of the new parts of C sharp. Um, but yes, it's hard. um, you don't get things for free, so you have to think about what you're doing, and you have to think really hard about how you're going to do it, and then you have to build it because there's nothing out of the box. All Brutal gives you is an API. So, the full Vulkan API, they've essentially created a C++. It's just a C++ API layer, abstraction layer over the top of Vulkan. But it all they've done is wrapped every single function from Vulkan. So if it's in the Vulkan spec, it's in Brutal. So you can make all the same calls. But yeah, you need to the program the graphics side is very laborious. Thankfully, some of the other guys who are much smarter at graphics than me, I mean, I know some stuff and I've learnt some stuff, but there's guys that are much smarter than me about graphics that are working on the graphics side. Yeah, so it's really just a wrap around Vulkan and a few other things out of the box. Like they've got the F mod and um, IM GUI or ImGUI, however you want to call it, for the UI side of things. Again, just a C++ layer over the top of IM GUI so that it's exposed through C#. Yeah. So you have to think about what you're doing, and you have to have purpose to what you're doing. I think, and there's none of the bloat. That's the best bit. So we're getting the performance we're getting because we've built what we need without any of the bloat that you get with one of the game engines. With a game engine, you could have an object. The object has all of these components on it, like, God knows how many components that Unity or Unreal adds onto an object by default. That's all doing stuff in the background, even if you don't need it. And you get to control when things happen. So a lot of the time in Unity, when we were doing KSP development, 9 times out of 10 it'd be, oh, it's a Unity thing. That would be our response. Why is this happening? It's a Unity thing. It's a timing issue. It's the way that Unity runs things in this sequence issue is creating our problem. And how do we get around that? Don't need to worry about that in Brutal because it's like, okay, if I want, I'm going to set it up to execute in this manner. Yeah. So we have a whole bunch of worker threads doing all this stuff in the background. I want something done and it doesn't have to be done straight away. I'll just schedule it onto the worker and he'll do it for me. And then it'll come back to me when it's done, kind of thing.
Everybody that I've spoken to over on the team at RocketWorks has said that while it lives up to its name of being brutal to work with, and like you said, it's hard, but they all say that they enjoy working with it more than Unity and Unreal. And it sounds like that's kind of been your experience as well.
I'll never go back to Unreal or Unity.
Wow.
Sorry. No. I hope to work on this project. Hopefully it's successful. Hopefully it can keep going and we can deliver on what we want to do. That's my plan. That's what I'd love to do. So we just need it to work. We just need people to contribute.
Yes. And if you want to contribute to the project, that's a great time to point out that you can go to ahwoo.com. That's AHWOO.com, and you can play Kitten Space Agency right now for free. You can also contribute to the project there. And yeah, there's monthly contributions. Even $5 helps. So I highly encourage everybody to check it out.
The $5 monthly contributions in the long run probably mean a lot more to the company and the project than like just a $20 one-off, if that makes sense. There's a lot of operating expense in doing something like this. A lot of that money is coming out of Dean's pocket right now. And yeah, we honestly want to see it succeed. Dean wants to try this. His hope and goal, I mean, all of us are on board with it, is, we want to create the same thing that Kerbal did and inspire the next generation, right? So one of the great things I got out of working on Kerbal was reading about people like, I loved Kerbal so much that I went on and I learned astrophysics, and now I'm working for NASA, or now I'm working for ESA, or now I'm working for SpaceX or whatever. It's like, wow, like we inspired people that much. And that's what we hope to do with this. And Dean's idea is that he wants this to be free so that he can put it in schools. That's what we would love to do, right? But of course, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But hopefully, yeah. We haven't talked about they don't die. Not saying they don't, right? We've talked about should they die or not? Do they have 9 lives or not? I understand Dean's love of Steam. That was sarcasm.
Yep.
But then we were like, what else? Like he was talking about doing all these other things, and we're like, you know what? At a point in time, we're going to stop. We're not going to have this solar system, so we'll have to start making up planets. And I think there's a plan to start something in the new year around building some new system that will be part of the game.